Welcome, everybody, to the December 15th, 2020 Research Matters. We're so excited to have you here and celebrate the holiday season with us. We're going to be talking today about a day in the life of the Hrpp. So this is the first in a series of going through the Eirb. I should say this is the second in the series. Stephanie Francisco did a great presentation for us last month on the Eirb basics. Today we're going to be talking about a day in the life of the Hrpp, and moving into January we'll start talking about specific types of submissions, exempt new studies, expedited new studies, etc. That schedule is on our website if you want to take a look at that so you have an idea of what's upcoming. But for today, I'm excited that we have Amber Hicks, Allison Griffin, Erica Howard Dunn, Kelechi Achendu, Kimberley Hawkins in spirit, and Kimberley Mapes presenting with us. So we're going to move into it. We're going to do just some quick metrics, and then we'll move into some other things, just some Microsoft Teams live event housekeeping items. Just again, the basis of these live events is that if you have any questions, you can type your question into the Q&A. You're not going to be able to unmute yourself or interact with the speakers except through the Q&A. So please utilize that. We love getting questions and being able to answer them. The slides will be sent after this session is complete. And for any of you who are attending, if you click on the link to rejoin the meeting after we end the live event, you will immediately see the video. So if you do have any questions, you want to refer back to it before we post it to our website, you can use the link in the meeting invitation. The other thing just to note is that attendance certificates will be sent to those who logged in with a valid email address. Essentially, that means that you are signed in and joined through Teams. If you don't receive a certificate and you need one, please email hrpp@utsouthwestern.edu and we'd be happy to send out an attendance certificate for you. So again, what we're going to be talking about today are just some quick metrics overviews, some Eirb updates, and then we'll move into a day in the life of the Hrpp. So here's our volume over the last 6 months and in the last 30 days. I did want to highlight, and we will potentially be showing this in more detail in a future Research Matters session, that the overall modifications number is down, and that is a direct result of that add remove study personnel activity that was put in place to allow study teams to submit their personnel modifications without needing Hrpp review, and it's good to see that the numbers are showing that that activity is being utilized. So please keep utilizing it, and if you have any questions or concerns about that activity, let us know. But that is why you're seeing a slight drop overall if you go back to some previous Research Matters and compare the overall total numbers. It's because we're starting to see that drop in modifications from those admin modifications starting to just be processed through the system. Here is our full board new studies, median turnaround in calendar days. This is the time of submission to getting that Eirb approval and stipulations met. So our goal, as it has been for a couple of years, is 45 days. And in the month of November, our median turnaround time on that was 19 days. We're continuing to see that our turnaround time on these full board new studies is exceeding our expectations. One thing I just want to note here is that this does include the stipulation response time, which includes the study teams going back to sponsors and resolving any of the stipulations the Eirb might have had. And then the Hrpp staff, the designated reviewers underneath Eric's team, you'll be hearing from Kelechi a little bit more about that process, resolving those stipulations and confirming that the responses from the study teams did actually resolve the stipulations. So this is just a really great number, and we're super excited to see this. For expedited new studies, we're continuing to see a trend of those dropping below our goal of 21 days. Submission to final approval, and we're excited to see that we're seeing that trend continue, and we hope to see that will stabilize right in that mid-teens area. With exempt new studies, I think we've started to see about where we're going to stabilize at with this work from home world. In November, we were at 12 days, 12 median days submission to final approval, and that seems to be pretty in line with what we've seen throughout the fall. With the Reliance studies, I know we've mentioned in the past that this number can be very volatile based on what the turnaround from the central Eirb is looking like and whether or not the central Eirb was given all of the appropriate information that Kimberley Hawkins needs to see as we accept the central Eirb's review. And so I know that there's some plans in place to hopefully get this number back down to where we want it to be. And our goal, I believe, may be slightly changing. So you might see some updates with this in the next Research Matters sessions. With major modifications, our goal on these is 30 overall days, and we're continuing to see a trend. In this case, that trend is because even though as full board modifications are being assigned to a full board agenda about 30 days out from the time of submission, our Hrpp analysts are processing those submissions as quickly as possible and asking Chuck Akers and Eric Solis what Eirb agenda they could push that major modification up to. So this is a case where the study teams are responding quickly to any concerns that the analysts may have, and the analysts are pushing the reviews as quickly as possible. So we're very excited to see that we are hopefully going to see some stabilization well below that 30-day time frame. And with minor modifications, we again continue to see a little bit of a drop, and I think probably a little bit of a stabilization around that mid single digits number, 5 to 4 days. This is really great. Our expectation on this is 10 median days, and this again reflects the analysts doing their jobs as quickly as possible, but study teams also preparing and submitting modifications that don't require a lot of back and forth. Moving on to Eirb updates. So we do have some updates related to Texas Health Resources. THR has been added to Greenlight. So studies that include THR as a site will be submitting their performance site review within the THR red cap that has existed. This was something that THR Research Administration presented at our Research Matters, I believe in June or July. I don't remember exactly what day that was. However, this process has not changed. Essentially now, after THR indicates their site approval in Velos, now Velos will send that site approval to Eirb. As before, we haven't changed the requirement that we get one site approval to satisfy the overall site approval requirement for Greenlight. That has not changed. We've just added another site if THR is an applicable performance site for your study. Another note, just to before we see some screenshots of that approval status chart with THR in it, is that if you are submitting a THR only study, so if you are doing your research only at THR, those studies will not require UT Southwestern SURE review for radiation safety. This was something that we had a manual bypass that THR Research Administration and the Hrpp work through on a study-by-study basis. That will no longer be required because the system will not be automatically indicating that UT Southwestern SURE review is necessary. Here is a screenshot of that approval status chart from Eirb. You can see here we've added another performance site, that is THR, and then just due to the size of the sites, I had to cut off that THR, but you can see for this just test submission, THR was not an applicable site, and so the overall review date indicates not applicable. So this is just an update that as you start to look at some new studies, you will see THR in that approval status chart. Some other various Eirb updates. We did add a hyperlink specifically to Form H on page 28. This is being done because we were seeing some confusion regarding the difference between the informed consent waiver, and that's Form G, versus a HIPAA authorization waiver, Form H. we were starting to see an increase of submissions where Form G was being attached to page 28 in Eirb, and that's not our intention. It just required some back and forth. So hopefully by linking to the correct documents, we'll start to see that the correct document is being attached in submissions. Another update that we installed that you won't be seeing on your side, but hopefully will prevent an error to, is that as Hrpp staff are entering an approval, if they enter an expiration date that has the same year as the current date, they'll get a warning from Eirb automatically. So an example is that if I'm entering an approval on January 21st of next year, the year is January or 2021. And if I were to enter an expiration date of 12/21/21, I would get that pop-up. And that just lets me know, hey, you have a same year here for approval period versus expiration period. Are you sure that's what you want to do? And essentially it will just help us prevent incorrect expiration dates from being entered, and sometimes having to just revert that through working with AIS. Another just quick update is that when you're looking at section 15, which is unapproved drugs, the IND holder will now show the correct information. When you were looking at that page, if you had selected funder, Eirb would code that response as 1. And so it was showing that 1 rather than showing that the IND holder was the text of funder. So that has been fixed, and now you will no longer see the 1, 2, or 3 for the options, but funder, sponsor, or other. So without further ado, we're going to move on to a day in the life of the Hrpp, and our first presenter is Allison Griffin. So Allison, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This is Allison Griffin. I'll be covering the analyst team. And so I need the next slide. So the analyst team performs a number of tasks. We are reviewing all submissions for completeness, accuracy, and so that's something like the correct classification of a medication. We look at consistency as well. So for example, if a study says it's minimal risk in one place, greater than minimal risk in another location, we check for that and get clarification from the study team. And so the process for an item that goes through our review for minimal risk items, an analyst performs a preview on an item, and then a designated reviewer confirms the review and makes the determinations. For example, confirming the expedited category, confirming that the criteria for a waiver of documentation of consent are met, things like that. For full board items, these are scheduled for meetings as soon as they enter the Hrpp queue. So an analyst performs a preview on an item and passes it on to the correct meeting manager, and then it's reviewed by the board. Some of our staff serve as designated reviewers, so we make non-human, non-regulated research determinations for items where Eirb review is not required. We enter exempt determinations for items that fall within exempt categories. We enter approvals for expedited studies, and those are for items that fall within expedited categories. We also staff office hours and answer questions from study teams. Okay, I'm also going to share a day in the life of an Hrpp analyst, and this is what a typical day for me is like. And I'm also going to share a couple of tips that will help your reviews go faster. Josh had mentioned that our turnaround times are looking great. If this is a way to keep them looking great, help us keep them looking great, and maybe get them even lower. The first thing I do every day is check my tracking log. Josh has created tracking logs for each of us that pull from the Orbit system and show us everything that's assigned to us in one live Excel spreadsheet that's updated every day. So that's how we keep track of everything. Then I review items based on the following kind of hierarchy, triage type of method. Items that are scheduled for a meeting have first priority. And so one tip for helping reviews go faster, since Chuck Akers, the manager of the analyst team, schedules items for meetings as they come into the office, making sure that their level of risk is accurate when they're submitted helps a lot with review. For example, the items that are scheduled for meetings are new studies where full board review is selected, and modifications that are indicated that they're major modifications. The next thing that I prioritize is continuing reviews that are within 30 days of expiration. So that means that they will expire in 30 days or less. And I do this because if we approve continuing reviews within 30 days of their expiration date, we are able to keep the anniversary date and improve it for 12 full months so that you can submit continuing reviews less often. So we're not cutting any time off of your approval. The next thing that I follow up on is I follow up with study teams on items that have not met their requested deadline. As Josh mentioned earlier, our turnaround times have decreased substantially since we started working at home. This helps facilitate research, makes UT Southwestern more attractive to sponsors who want to do clinical trials, and this is good for the research pillar or mission of UT Southwestern. And so in order to keep this going and maybe make it even better is to making sure that you're responding to our requested deadlines by the date, because that allows us to focus any of that time we'd be spending following up on doing reviews. The next item that I'm looking at every day is emails, phone messages from study teams with questions, follow-up, etc. We strive to respond to these items within 24 hours. And then I look at non-regulated, non-human determination requests. And these are the items that do not require Eirb review. As Josh mentioned, we are going to have more in-depth presentations in the coming months, focusing on exempt review, expedited review, and full review. And so we also use checklists to guide our review, and I believe that's the next slide. Okay. Hopefully you all can see this, but this is part of the first page of one of the checklists that we use for new studies. The whole thing is 8 pages long, so I'm not able to go in depth with this at this time, but we have recently updated it, and it goes through all of the major points of a new study. So it looks at study personnel, different determinations having to do with medications, covers the recruitment plan. It's meant to cover exempt studies, expedited studies, and the pre-review process for full board studies. It includes instructions, places for notes, and at the end, we create our list of requested changes that we send to the study teams. And the goal of this checklist is to make sure that the submissions are complete, accurate, consistent, and meet all applicable regulations. This part of it has some instructions, information about the study, funding source, and ancillary committees, because we also check to see which other bodies at UT Southwestern need to look at the study. Got one more slide. This is a slide of just the structure of our analyst team. Chuck is our manager, and all the reviewers are here. All the analysts who review for the meetings and minimal risk are on the left side, and then the meeting managers are on the right side of this form. That is pretty much all that I have. I'm ready to pass it on to our next presenter, who I believe is Kelechi.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kelechi, and I am part of the Eirb team. Next slide, Joe. Okay, so the role of the Eirb team is to serve as regulatory specialists and are also Eirb members. We manage Eirb meetings, perform designated reviews for review of minor stipulations and expedited submissions. We're the point of contact for study team, Eirb members, and Eirb chairs. And we also review and make determinations on non-regulated research submissions, and these are your Y1 and Y2 forms. Eric Solis is our manager, and these are the members of the IRB team. Yvette is the meeting manager for Board 1, Stephanie Francisco for Board 2, Scott Myers, Board 3, and myself in Board 4. So pretty much our day-to-day will go something like this. For the review, whenever we get a minor mod or exempt or expedited study from the analyst, this is kind of how it would go. As one study submitted, the program manager will assign to the analyst team. The analyst team will conduct the peer review, kind of like what Allison mentioned. Work with the study team to make sure that there are no outstanding issues. If they are, they'll reach out to the study team to get them resolved. And once they are resolved, the analyst team will assign it to the IRB team for final review and approval. Okay. And then whenever we receive a major modification or a full board submission, the steps are pretty much the same. A study is submitted, program manager Chuck will assign it to the analyst team. Analyst team will conduct a peer review and also work with the study team to resolve any issues. Once they're resolved, the analyst team will submit to the IRB meeting. If the issues are not being resolved, the program manager or the analyst will move to the nearest available meeting once it's resolved. And then in preparation for the meeting, we will also review all of the submissions that are sent from the analyst team, the mods, the new studies, and continue review. And then once we review them and make sure it is clean, we'll send out the assignments to board members for their review. Sometimes the board members will come back with questions or have additional concerns regarding those submissions, and then at that point we would also work with the study team to resolve those issues. And then once that's done, before the meeting and during and after, we'll prepare the agenda and the meeting minutes before the meetings. And then this happens every other day as we prepare for the meetings as they come, 2 times a month, I believe. And that is pretty much my day-to-day, our day-to-day. And I'll pass it on to Erica.
Hi, my name's Erica Howard Dunn, and today I'm going to speak on behalf of the SIRB and the Reliance Team. I will warn you, this will be brief for the simple fact that there's so much overlap in what the SIRB team does that overlaps with what the analysts and the IRB board members do. So we can go ahead and go to the next. Yes. So the first thing I want to do is describe or answer a question that I get so often. What is the difference between SIRB and the Reliance team? And how do I know which team I should be working with? And we have to consider the fact that we are talking about multi-site studies, right? So many sites for one study. And the team that you work with really depends on who's serving as the IRB of record. So if UT Southwestern is serving as the IRB of record, in that case, that study would be considered SIRB, and you'll be working with myself and Maureen Aslam. Now, in situations where the IRB of record is a central IRB, so it could be commercial like Advara or Eirb, or it could be another academic center. In those cases, that's when you're going to be working with Kimberley Hawkins and her team. So the day-to-day for the SIRB team, you'll see that we manage agreements. For example, if there are 12 sites, we're responsible for managing those agreements as it relates to IRB functions. So if there's 12 sites, we have 12 agreements to look over. We're also responsible for making sure that all the local contexts, or I should say, local policies or procedures for all sites are addressed within the application. For example, we know UT Southwestern has a lot of policies in place as it relates to compensation, using specific injury language, and those same policies every site has. So we need to make sure that we're familiar with those policies and we apply it within the study. And then these next 2 items should look pretty familiar. This is pretty much what Kelechi and Allison just described. You know, as an IRB record, our goal is to make sure that criteria is met for approval. We, the SIRB team, use the exact same process as far as pre-review. If it's minimal risk, it gets sent to a designated reviewer. In this case, it's me. If it's greater than minimal risk, we then push it on to the board. Then the last bullet point here is we serve as the privacy board. In most cases, we're serving as a privacy board for external sites as well. And then a bullet point that I didn't place on here is we also exclusively review the THR research submissions. So if you have any questions about SIRB or THR, feel free to reach out to myself or Maureen. So next bullet point, the Reliance team. You'll see that there is some slight overlap because the Reliance team is responsible for contracts as well. The difference is the Reliance team, they're responsible for the contract between UT Southwestern and the Central IRB. So that's where Kimberley comes into place. And then they make sure that all the policies and procedures that UT Southwestern requires for the approval of research at our institution have been considered in the research application. And then we can move on to the next slide where you'll just see where our team members are highlighted. Again, my name is Erica Howard-Dunn, but if you need to reach out to me, it's erica.howard@utsouthwestern.edu. And we'll be happy to walk you through the process. And then I'll pass it on.
Sorry, everybody. I think we might be having a slight technical problem. I'm not sure if anybody else is hearing Amber, but I am not. Amber, do you want to try again? Well, I apologize, everybody. It seems Amber is, for some reason, her audio is not working. Oh, there we go. Amber, are you there? I heard something.
Hello?
There you go. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. I do apologize about that. I'm not sure what happened. I will start over. Luckily, I did really bad the first time. So I'm on the Investigator Relations team. I do apologize. I sometimes do talk a little fast. The purpose of the Investigator Relations team, since it is still kind of new, a goal that we have is we want to help strengthen the communication of the IRT processes that take place between the UT Southwestern research community and also within the Hrpp office as well with other staff members. Some ways that we do that is we're working on standardizing internal approval processes for all items that are submitted for review and approval to the Hrpp office. We've also begun to provide create and we'll be providing educational guidance documents in an effort to reduce turnaround times, not only for us as an IR team to get those documents processed out to the study teams, but also to the Hrpp staff and the study staff. So if everything is submitted how it should be, it would reduce turnaround times, which I know everyone would appreciate. And another thing is we're kind of like a last QI check of all the study documents that we look at whenever we are processing them out after approval has been received for those documents. Some other responsibilities that we do on the IR team is we also manage the Hrpp email box for the department. And we also do, if you have a study that's getting close to expiration for continuing review or an annual update, we'll also send an email to those PIs and study teams just to let them know that it is close to expiration and just please submit something soon so it can be reviewed in time. A very good question is when to contact the Investigator Relations Team. Some common things that I do find that you can contact us for is going to be if a consent form was supposed to be stamped within an approval date and it was not. If there was an updated document that was not uploaded into the Documents tab or in the approved PDF section from the main study page, or if you also see that there was a document that was approved in a modification, but it had an incorrect name to it, please do contact for those. We do want the documents to be named accurately. So when study teams are pulling those documents, they are pulling the correct approved documents that they need. Also, if you notice any errors by study teams of the accuracy of the documents processed out, I would say best practice is as soon as you receive an approval letter for a new study, modification, anything submitted, please look at those documents that are approved so we can quickly and easily identify those errors rather than a few months or weeks down the road and there's maybe a consent form that you're trying to pull that's incorrect. So again, best practice when you receive an approval letter, just look over those documents. If something is incorrect, please feel free to email me. This is something that's going to apply to current or past documents. There may be some errors in previous documents made that have been processed out. Contact me with the study number and just let me know which ones are wrong. I'm happy to fix them. And it's also going to ensure that we have the right documents going out to study teams. And if study staff has a question about any kind of document that was processed, or also if there was a document that they had submitted and it has not been processed yet, I can go ahead and provide an education piece of why it has been stamped or why it has not been stamped as well. The team members for our Investigator Relations Team, Joshua Fidua, he is going to be our Assistant Director of the Hrpp office, myself, Amber as the team lead, and Luyan Tai is on the team, but currently she is going to be assisting with Reliance Studies. And a little bit on kind of how our approved documents are processed. This is going to be just a short rundown process of what we do. So we download all the documents that were submitted for a study, modification, continuing review, or annual update. Then we rename all the documents per the Hrpp naming convention. Whenever we mention finalize the Word documents, what we mean by finalize, that process consists of inserting a footer with the Hrpp naming convention. We accept all track changes. We briefly view the document to identify any errors in the documents, such as if there's a page break and after we accept track changes, there's now a blank page. We go ahead and correct that. And then we lock the document to track changes. If a consent form is going to be included, we then convert it to a PDF document to get an approval date stamped on it. When that's completed, we upload the finalized approved documents into the parent study form. That is going to be for our internal version control. So any documents submitted for a modification, those should only be submitted within the modification smart form. And once we do the parent smart form, we then upload the finalized documents to a different section that we see on our side, but those documents are the ones that appear in the Documents tab that you all would see from the main study page. And documents are uploaded into the appropriate section. If it's going to be a consent document, it will be on the top portion for approved PDF documents and stamped consent documents. Use PDF consents with subjects. And the bottom portion is the approved study documents for use and future modifications. For the modification approval letters, whenever we do prepare an approval letter, there is going to be some questions of potentially changing what's going to be in an approval letter. I would just like to give a reminder that in the modification smart form in section 1.3, there is a section that says summary of modification request. That portion, whatever you enter there, whether it be anything for your records, anything a sponsor wants to see specifically mentioned as to what items are reviewed, if you do enter that into section 1.3 of the Modification Smart Form, it is going to automatically pull into the approval letter and the verbiage that's there. And the approval letters that are sent out are to the PI, study coordinator, and the primary regulatory contact. Approval letters can also be viewed on the Documents tab. Once you get past the for use and future modifications, if you just scroll down, it will give an approval letter history for the entirety of the study. Some questions may be, what is our Hrpp naming convention format? I just kind of did an example here. There is some documents or some guidance that's being created to better assist with the naming. So what you see here in pink, and I do have versions for our light studies as well as our legacy studies. It's going to be the study number is going to go first, and then the PI's name. The document name with any descriptors as required. I just used a consent form since those can have so many descriptors with them. The next portion of the naming will be the modification, continuing review, at what time of submission was it approved, and then the very last portion is going to be the date of the approval. Is going to be on the document, and that also helps assist us with our internal version control. So then up next, that'll be for quality assurance and monitoring for Kimberley Mapes.
Thank you, Amber. So I'm Kimberley Mapes. Go ahead. Okay, there you go. Good afternoon. I'm going to give you a brief overview on the QA and monitoring team. I will be going through these fairly quickly due to time constraints, but if you're interested, you can see the entire presentation this Thursday at noon during Research Connections. Again, I'm Kim. The other monitoring analysts are Jeffrey Wilson and Scott Myers. I know you heard Scott's name earlier, but he is actually fulfilling 2 roles right now. And then Kelly Benton is our QA and monitoring program manager. Our responsibility is to evaluate and improve human research protections through reviews, monitoring, and education. So what we review doesn't just include research studies, but we also look at the IRB records, the HRPPO activities and records, and reportable events. When we there's several different things we look at when choosing the studies we're going to review. Some of these are just routine reviews, not for cause, and there are some that are for cause reviews. For our routine reviews, there's several different criteria. So we look at the risk level. It doesn't just mean greater than minimal risk. Minimal risk studies can also be chosen. We look at studies that are under INDs or IDEs or investigator held, specifically IND and IDE studies. We look at studies that enroll vulnerable populations, PIs that have a lot of active studies, particular studies that have a lot of reportable events, and in some cases, PIs actually request that we do a review. For cause reviews, there are several things that can trigger that. It can be a subject complaint, a whistleblower, or an employee filing a complaint. There can be reports of allegations or non-compliance, or the IRB can actually request that we review a study. So when we're looking at these studies, I'll go through the things we kind of focus on in the participant files, as well as the reg binder. This isn't everything, but these are just Some of the main things we look at, some things that really stand out. So we want to ensure that subjects are indeed eligible to be enrolled in that study. So we will look at your eligibility criteria checklist and ensure that the person deeming them eligible is capable of doing so. We will look at your informed consent documents and HIPAA authorization forms, whether they're separate or I know now there's a lot of combined forms. And we need to ensure that the latest approved versions are the ones that are being used by the study teams. We will ensure that the informed consent documents are personally signed and dated by the participant. I know there's alternative processes that can be IRB approved, and if that's fine, if it has been, that's fine, but we need to make sure of that. And we need to make sure the PI or an authorized approved person is conducting the informed consent process. We look at your data collection forms and your source docs, your records or logs of deviations, AEs, and your PERSOs to make sure that those are accurate and up to date, and your participant payment logs, if that is applicable to your study. We do go into Velos and to ensure that all your participants are being entered into Velos, and we go into Epic and make sure that the informed consent forms are being scanned and entered into Epic. In the regulatory binders, a few of the things we look at, again, there's more, but we look to ensure that your DOA log is complete and up to date. We need to see your screening and enrollment logs. We look at your investigator and personnel training. This is not just your city training, but also you should have protocol specific training. Your CVs, qualifications, and license of PIs, COIs, and other study personnel need to be up to date. We look at your protocol, your consent forms, your HIPAA authorization forms to make sure you do have all the approved versions filed, as well as your recruitment material and case report forms. You need to have your IRB approvals on file. This includes not just your initial application, but your continuing reviews, your modifications, and your reportable events. And we will need to see your DSMC reports and ensure that those are on file as well. So some of the most common things that we're finding, just since we've started this, is either completely missing regulatory binders or regulatory binders not being completed or up to date. One of the big ones is the DOA logs. You need to keep that up to date at all times. That is a live document. So instead of just creating it when your study starts and forgetting about it, anytime a study member is added or removed from the study, that needs to be updated. You do need a protocol specific training log, and AE and your PERSO tracking logs, incomplete or missing deviation logs. One thing we see a lot or hear a lot, just because your study may be a minimal risk study does not mean that you do not need a deviation log or an RE log. This can be applicable to both greater than minimal risk or minimal risk studies. A lot of times, if it's a PI initiated study, we'll hear, well, this isn't applicable to our study, it's PI initiated. Any study can have deviations or REs, regardless of the level of review. Incomplete screening and enrollment logs, we see that a lot. Like I said earlier, we do look in Velos to ensure all your subjects have been added into Velos. So we need to ensure that both Velos and what you report at CR and your screening logs all match up. We need to be able to verify subject eligibility. A lot of times the inclusion, exclusion, or eligibility checklist are missing. We need to be able to ensure that the subjects are signing the approved stamped versions of the consent form and HIPAA authorization forms. A lot of times they're just out of date, or maybe you didn't use the one that was printed directly from the Eirb. It may be the correct form, but it doesn't have the stamp on it. So we need to make sure that's being done correctly. We need to be able to verify source documentation and data entries. We see a lot of missing case report forms or incomplete case report forms. Anytime this happens, we understand that things may be incomplete, but there needs to be a note to file or some kind of explanation as to why. We need to see your patient payment logs. So if you are paying participants, you need some sort of payment log that we can verify that that is being done correctly. And we need to be able to ensure that your subjects are being added into Velos and that your consent forms are being scanned into Epic. So right now, obviously we're all working remotely, so it looks a little bit different. We're not doing the in-person reviews. So just a brief overview of how we're doing this from home. So once a study is selected, it is given to one of the QA monitoring staff members, and we begin our remote review. So we go ahead and do everything we can through the Eirb, through Velos, and looking into Epic, and complete it as much as we can without your input. Once we've done everything we can do from our end, then we reach out to the study teams. We let you know of the remote visit, and we request the regulatory documents that we need to be sent to us via email. There's some examples here: CVs, licenses, enrollment logs, DOA logs. In that email, you're going to have a respond by date. We know that right now you may not be able to get us everything by that date, but at least respond to us and let us know, hey, I don't have access to this right now. Can I have an extension, or can I have it done by, whatever particular date? We totally get that. Everyone's having a hard time right now, and we are flexible, but we do need for you to at least respond to us by that date. We also try to look at the consent forms remotely via Epic. A lot of times either they're not in Epic or we're not able to see them in Epic. If that is the case, then we may send you a randomly selected list of participants. It's not going to be every single participant you have. We'll just send you a list. And when we do, we will need you to scan and email their signed consent and HIPAA forms to us so we can review those remotely. We will schedule a virtual closeout visit once we are done with the study coordinator and the PI. Once that virtual closeout visit is done, we will send out a monitoring report. This report will have our observations and findings. We'll send that to you via email. In any events we have not been able to address prior to this will be noted under actions required. Our hope is to be able to address everything that we possibly can, but if you do have actions required, there will be a date in which these actions must be completed. Once this is complete, then copies of these reports will be sent to the PI, the study coordinator, and can also be sent to other UT Southwestern officials.
Thank you so much to, in order, Allison Griffin, Kelechi Achendu, Erica Howard Dunn, Amber Hicks, and Kimberley Mapes. That was, I think, very informative, and hopefully that addressed some of the requests that we saw in the Research Matters evaluations regarding sort of getting an idea of what is it that the Hrpp staff do on a day-by-day basis. I've seen that some questions have come in and they've already been answered by Rhonda or Chuck. I see that we also have another question just regarding verifying research trainings. That's being answered right now. If you have any other questions related to the content that was presented here today, or just a general question and you want to take advantage of the fact that the Hrpp staff are here and available, please go ahead and put those in. We'd love to be able to answer any and all questions. While we're waiting for questions, because I know there's a little bit of a lag, I'll just remind everybody that we do currently have virtual office hours that the Hrpp and the Office for Clinical Trial Management, OCTM, are putting on. That's every Tuesday and Thursday from 10 to 11 a.m. You can access those if you are signed up for our events, the Hrpp events listserv. We send out new links every week just to prevent unauthorized people trying to get in and inappropriately use our Zoom meeting. I'm not seeing any other questions pop up. So I'll just remind everybody, Allison kind of alluded to it. We do have additional presentations that are upcoming in January, February, March, and through the rest of the fiscal year that will dive a little bit deeper on some of the requirements for exempt, expedited, and full board studies. And then we'll also move into an FDA regulated series. So unless I see another question pop up in the next couple of seconds, we appreciate all of you attending, and we look forward to talking with you next month at Research Matters. I see there was just another question regarding the link for research connections. If just for that person, if you want to send an email to hrpp at utsouthwestern.edu, we'd be happy to connect you to get you that link for research connections this Thursday. Thank you so much. Happy holidays, everybody, and have a wonderful, hopefully somewhat warm and not too cold holiday season.